observation is that they're on Twitter.
So walk us through a little bit of this strategy. How did you decide who you're going to connect with, and how did you connect with them? What kind of things did you say when you reached out?
Right. No, those are good questions. So it's the basics of any other really good marketing or communication campaign, and the understanding of the ecosystem that so if, for example, we're in financial services industry, we want to hit up the thought leaders at the big pubs and the outlets, and we want to hit the specific writers that handle finance topics, for example. Then we figure out who those are, research those, find out who they are, and then reach out to them, and just with a quick, so connect with them, and then with a quick Twitter, just say, hey, we've got a really compelling story about, and then I give them the reason why they care and how it's going to be a good story for them. And you got to be really concise with that. Would love to talk more kind of thing. And that works great. That works really well.
Cool. So when you say that works great, what kind of conversion, I guess, are you hoping for? Because I think sometimes people get really excited about strategies and don't realize that it's not going to be 100% or even like 80%, or, and they give up. So what are expectations there?
That's true. And I would say the success rate is completely tied to the value proposition that you're pitching, your story of the story that you're pitching. Yeah. And so if you have something that's a hot topic and you've got somebody who's got something unique to say, and it is a trending talking point, it's a trending issue or whatever, then you're going to have a much greater result. I'll give you a small example is, I'm based in Austin, and there is a local TV station that has Tech Tuesday. So they've got a little piece. So every week they've got to come up with something that's interesting. Well, we're a tech town. So there's a bunch of that kind of stuff. It was really easy to get to the writer, the broadcaster, the anchor person for that show, and be able to say, we've got the latest in technology. It's been vetted. Here's what the technology does. We'd love to invite you out to test drive it yourself. And he jumped at that. Oh. So then it's the age-old proposition of once you have some local coverage, then it's easier to build on that. So I think that's one of the challenges. I'm curious about what you guys think, but sometimes if you're having a hard time getting traction, then it makes sense to start local and grow from there. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's a really good, Roselle, like I said, I am having Rosella here to talk about this because this is not my thing. So I help people with their public speaking and things like that, which is related to communication, but definitely not in the media realm. So I'm really interested to hear what you guys have, and I'm here to facilitate this conversation. So Rosella, let us know, what are your thoughts on this Twitter strategy, starting local, or everything that we've heard Margot say so far?
So I think I missed some of what Margot said because of tech issues, but I think it's a great strategy if it works for you. I've tried it myself to pitch on behalf of clients and haven't had much luck with Twitter. It's sort of the luck of the draw, but things work for certain people and then they don't work for others. And I think definitely starting local is a great strategy. You have a real easy tie-in to the community there. It's like, hey, I live here and I'm doing this cool thing, and journalists really like that.
They do.
I have a history as a journalist, so I went to school and studied journalism. While I was in school, I was freelancing.
Me
and
too.
I continued to freelance a little bit faster. And so when I was doing that, I guess I would have been open to receiving pitches on Twitter, but it didn't happen that often. And I think it's easier to share all of the details of a pitch in email. Although, of course, then there are so many people pitching you things and sending you press releases that are totally irrelevant.
Right.
So, the journalist is kind of overwhelmed in a lot of ways, and you just have to write a really good pitch and know why you're pitching someone.
That's exactly right. And it's like any other marketing or communication effort where you've got to really understand the market you're targeting and what they care about. What's the biggest pain they have, and how can your story help solve it? So if it's, I need good stories about the latest trend and whatever, I'm trying to think of an example that without giving away brands, but, sometimes you've got great stuff to work with for a client and sometimes you don't. And so success rates depend completely on whether you have a hot topic that you're working with, if it's sexy or not. And you can wordsmith it and position it and do all the magic that you can, but you're not going to make it sweet and appealing beyond a certain point if it's not. So that's a challenge whenever you've got clients that maybe have a message that's not as captivating. But and the whole thing is building up that momentum. And once it's out there on if it's with some local news outlets, then you're published, and then you can put that on your website, and you have the client's website, and then you have some successes that you can point to for the next reporter or writer that you connect with.
Yeah, and I would imagine that momentum is key, right? Because you're not going to, just like anything else in life, I would imagine you're not going to go from 0 to 60 in 2 seconds. Like, right. You have to kind of work your way up. So Christy is mentioning in the chat that she feels like Twitter is a great starter point for reaching people, but maybe she's saying email might still be a great way to go. I'm curious, do you guys have any other strategies outside of Twitter or something that might be a good entry point? Like, how do you kind of get in with these people so that you're seen as someone to maybe contact when they need a story, or, for them to want to reach out to you? How do you kind of get that attention to begin with?
So one of the strategies that I always refer back to, I was the recipient of as a journalist. There's this expert on like career topics. So his PR person will send me basically every month a pitch it's really like a press release / pitch, and it'll be like 10 tips to ramp up your resume or something like that. So it's very topic specific and gives actual input on the topic. And I always think of that person when I see someone needing a story about that topic, because the pitch is it's always spot on. It comes regularly, so they're always top of mind with me. And so that's a really great way to do it. You, of course, have to start by identifying the right journalist to pitch it to. So, you can look in whatever publications you want to be written about by, or, to have interview you want to research the section and look at who's writing the articles. And from there's often like a bio of the journalist, or they'll have links to the Twitter. So then you can follow them on Twitter and get more information there. Journalists will put out requests for sources on Twitter sometimes. So that's why Margot's strategy works really well with certain journalists. And so that's, focusing on the person who's going to be the right person to receive your regular pitches is the starting step. And then just consistently sending them really good value. It's like with any content marketing strategy, you just want to share really good value that shows what you know. And then people will start to understand that you're someone to go to for that topic.
Yeah. So Margot said something earlier that, like, if you don't have a client who maybe has the juiciest topic, that it might be a little bit more difficult to pitch them. So I think that is something that is a concern for a lot of people who do maybe info products, or who educate, or who are in business at all. I mean, we're not sharing like the funny cat or the crazy, it's not like those really what you think of when you think of like a viral post, or that information that is necessarily really entertaining. And not saying that it can't be, but how do you bring that fun to your pitch or to your topic, no matter what it might be? How do you like spice that up for your clients then?
You asking me or Rosella or both?
I'll ask both of you. Let's start with you, Margot, and then we'll go to Rosella.
Yeah, well, it's a lot easier if you have a sexy customer. and product. But if it's not, then I think using humor is very, very, it's very effective. I think being very casual. I see that LM Freckles has made a couple of comments that are really good ones. It's all about building a relationship with the reporter, and Twitter is great for that. Actually, any social media is great for that if you can connect with the reporter. Really, business always comes down to build a relationship. We talk about, is it business to consumer? Is it business to business? It's really person to person. And we're all looking to connect at a human level. I mean, it's one of the most basic elements of being human. And business is about humans doing business together. So finding something that you can connect with and make a personal connection with to that reporter is always good. You look at their profile on other channels, and see if there's anything that you can draw out and connect. What groups are they following on LinkedIn? What groups are they liking on Facebook? Just a little bit of digging to find out what they're about, so that you know something going in and you can make as strong of a first connection as possible. And I think it is ideal to follow up in email and phone and whatever from there. It just depends on the situation. But using humor, yes, I think that can be done very well, although it needs to be consistent with the brand.
Right.
So and you can use a little humor, it needs to be within the overall essence of the brand. So you can have a more casual social media presence of the brand, but it still needs to be consistent. It doesn't need to be your official, most corporate feel, but it can't be too far off the brand, or you're doing your brand a disservice, in my opinion.
Right. Okay. Do you have anything to add to that, Rosella?
Yeah, so Margot touches on a really great point. That's one of the points I was going to make, is that relationships is really key. And I think that's the sexiness factor is misleading. I think a business owner could hear that and think, oh gosh, like there's no way that my topic is sexy. Like no one's going to want to hear about this. But that's not necessarily really a deciding factor for the journalist. For the journalist, it's important that the story be timely. So, if you're just launching your product, or you're going to be launching it soon, like that's a great time to be sharing your topic, and it's a great time hook.
Right.
So, the time hook is really important. And then just consistently pitching. Like I said, that guy whose PR person pitches me, and I don't even really write about his topic at all anymore, but I still get the pitches, and it keeps that person top of mind for me. So just being consistent with anything and everything in your business is key. So sending them your tips on things regularly should be enough to catch their eye, honestly.
How often would you recommend reaching out to journalists? Like where is this borderline where we are helpful and useful versus like stalking and just like over the top annoying? Like how can we kind of walk that line? Let's start with you, Rosella.
Okay. So I think you could send a pitch like that has valuable tips or your take on something once or twice a month, and then the week after you send it, you could send a follow-up. Hey, did you receive this pitch? Do you have any questions for me? You can always follow up, and that's one of the keys to what I work most with my clients on, which is getting them published in places like Huffington Post. So there we write the articles to be published by the media, and it's the same thing. We send the pitch and follow up a week later, and then follow up again a week later after that. At that point, if they're not responding to the topic, then you drop it and you pitch them something else, but you're consistent, and just about every week you're touching base with them until you get in. And if you want to keep writing for them, you keep doing it then too. So that's my take.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, you need to put in quite a bit of legwork then, it seems. Like it's not just you reach out once and then they like it or you run away. Like you have to keep following up.
Yeah, that's why if you want to do this yourself, if you feel confident in pitching yourself, that's great. But if it's not really your wheelhouse, if you don't think you can be consistent, then it might be worth you hiring someone like Margot to do it for you. I've worked at a PR agency, and it can be very what they do is very valuable. It's not to be you could do it yourself, but you may not have the success, and you may not be consistent, and then you won't get there.
Yeah.
So it's really just a decision about what you are capable of doing, and then what you really want out of it. And, you could invest in someone else doing it for you.
Yeah, makes sense. Christy, LM Freckles, is that, I know you were adding a lot to the conversation, and I just wanted to reach out real quick and ask if you wanted to jump in and talk, actually speak, and then we can get some of your feedback on this too. So if you'd like, go ahead and call in. The seat is unlocked, right? Guys, can you see that?
It's
okay.
open.
And then, Margot, I would love for you to stay, but I didn't want to kidnap you if you have something to go. So
I know this is interesting. I'd love to hang out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we were going to talk about when, I first talked to Rosella about coming on here was actually writing the art. Hi, Christy. Thanks for joining.
Hey.
So, one of the things I wanted to talk about was actually writing the articles, and actually I guess why I want to bring this up. One, my thing is more of the putting together a good, solid message, right? And a lot of times when I hear tips on different things, like how do you get published, how do you get a book published, or how do you get this? Nobody ever talks about good content. I feel like everyone always just jumps to the marketing, and we kind of miss this big step of you need something that actually can stand on its own and shine and actually, back up what you're trying to do. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was that, and I don't know if you guys have any advice on that. Do you guys write for your clients? Do you just pitch for your clients, or what kind of is your thing? Christy, since you just got here, why don't you tell us what you do? Do you write for them? Do you work on that content? Do you just work on the pitching, or how do you approach this?
I actually don't write. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. I don't actually write content for anybody else. Part of my push is to teach people really how to reach out and pitch on their own. I think, in my 20 years of being in media, and I worked in daily news, so television as well as radio, the pitches that were the most successful for me often came from people who were directly connected. PR is great, but I've often found it was that sort of chain, right? So they call, they pitch, and then they have to set up with their client, and then it's the back and forth. And the last 8-9 years, I worked in a 24-hour radio newsroom. So we didn't really have that much time, right? So it was, are you ready? You're not ready? Okay, I have to move on. So I really see the value in entrepreneurs, small business, making that direct pitch on their own. But I think, part of it is content. Obviously, if you're pitching and then I go and sort of see who you are, I'm going to sort of scope you out, check out what you're sharing. And, if the pitch is the best thing you've got, then I might not go with you. Because if you don't have the content to sort of back you up, then, you're maybe not going to be the right fit for me. Just because, questions aren't rehearsed, right? Media isn't going to give you the questions oftentimes ahead of time. And especially if it's going to be a live situation, they want to know that you're the real deal and you're going to be able to handle that situation. Articles, newspapers, and magazines, they have that opportunity to massage the interview, right? So they prep it. But radio and television, you don't really have that opportunity. So if you don't have the good content to back up what you're saying in the pitch, then, they'll probably take a pass on you. So I think it is really about building your presence and building that content. And part of that's building your online sort of presence, right? So if you're not sharing great content, you don't necessarily have the followers, your Facebook fans, you don't have the likes on your page, you don't have the Twitter followers. And again, that reflects also when a journalist checks you out. If you don't have that solid online presence, then you might not be the right fit at that time.
So would you recommend, even for people who are more of a brick and mortar or more of a local service business or something that, not your traditional online business, how important is it for them to necessarily have that big online following to get attention of mainstream or local media that isn't, how much do they have to cross over, I guess?
I think a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. it's sort of not optional anymore. Is my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. There are people who can maybe get by with not having much of a digital presence, but it's really essential. I would put not having a digital presence in the same bucket as using a fax machine for business communication. Yeah, just
wow. Okay.
Yeah. So a funny story. I had somebody I was working with who I was helping a very small business. It was like a gratis thing that I was doing. And they were concerned that if we didn't put the name of the company of their website, which was nameofthecompany.com, it wasn't like something else, wasn't a long name. It was an easily remembered name. And they were concerned that if we didn't put shortnameofcompany.com on the product, that they wouldn't know we had a website. I thought, really? Is there anybody selling products to anybody that doesn't have a website? And if you were going to look for them, to put nameofcompany.com in there. They're going to find them. So it's kind of like, do you put the HTTP? No, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, all that. Anyway, it's just things evolve and not everybody keeps up. And there's a variety of stages that people are at in embracing digital. But I think with media, especially the traditional forms of media, they know they have to stay current and to get involved on and build their presence on digital as well. I think it's key.
Yeah. Okay.
I think one thing too is, and you guys talked about local media. It's one of the ways, if you don't have a huge online presence, if you're maybe a brick and mortar, it's one of the ways that you can sort of build up that presence. Local media, like you say, Margot, are hyper, they want to touch on local businesses. And that's where they focus their content. Right. So that's a great way to build your presence. You're reaching out to the local media. They want to feature people in their community. They want to feature businesses and people doing things in their community.
Right.
Reach out, build that sort of those press clippings, the radio, the TV.
Right.
And that's how you build up, right? So you get bigger media when they see that you have a presence and, they're like, oh, okay, this person's legit. They, how to feature in the local newspaper or magazine.
Right.
It's a way to sort of build the ladder up.
Totally agree. It's like anything else. You've got to lay a foundation and build it, and it takes some time. There's not an overnight success. Well, I guess there are a few examples, but they're by far the outliers because it's not typical. Typically, you're building relationships, and then you're expanding from there and delivering value to them and giving them a reason to want to respond to you because you've got something that they want and that they can use to help get done what they need to get done, which is be relevant and topical and fun and interesting in whatever their market is. If their market is geographic or if it's vertical or whatever it is, the same tenet goes for any of those, in my opinion.
So what I'm hearing here is, and this is not new. It's the same as anything else. It's a process. It takes time. You need to work at it. It's not just going to snap your fingers and there you go. You're a media star. So let's kind of break this down a little bit and go from, if you were maybe not just starting out, but if you were just starting out on getting this big media presence, right? Like you have something solid kind of in your own little world, but it's time to branch out. Let's kind of break this down and say, what's the first step? Like, do we start, you guys are mentioning local, you're mentioning people.
She froze.
She froze.
Yeah.
So,
she's like,
oh no, am I frozen? I'm back.
You're frozen.
Okay.
Are we playing freeze tag?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Christy's gone now. I can't see.
Here, I'll touch you. There you go.
Am I okay?
I can
I'm
hear
still
you.
seeing Christy.
Oh,
okay.
I can't see Christy. I can hear her. That's okay. All
Who's
right.
there?
Okay.
Did you guys hear my question?
You stopped at local.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know what I said then. Okay, my point was, let's break it down and tell me the first steps that we need to take if we're ready to grow and get visible in the media. Should we start with like social media, our own webpage, local media, and online instead of like a big mainstream? What should I do first? And Roselle, let's start with you.
Yeah, so I think required for any business is some social media. You don't, of course, have to be on every platform, but wherever your clients or customers are is where you need to be. And having a website, I think, is basically required. I mean, I keep seeing lately these articles that are like, how you can run a business without a website. And I'm like, you know what? I may not get a ton of traffic to my website, but I wouldn't want to run a business without my website.
Yeah.
I feel like it's my digital home. It's
your brand.
Yeah. But it's the place where someone can go to get to know more about me.
Yeah, it's the point of entry.
Right. For
Yeah.
some, it is. Yeah. Why would you not want to have something if they open that door?
Yeah.
Right.
And so, and then for me personally, with the work that I do, I love and would advocate that you go the route of contributing articles yourself. Mm-hmm. So I work with clients and I teach workshops. I've done it for them, and I've also taught them how to do it themselves. And I'm doing a webinar on Saturday, like my 8-step process to get you into Huffington Post or other major media. I've worked with clients and gotten them in Entrepreneur, Upstart. You know, you could use the same process to get into like Mind, Body, Green, wherever really that your clients or customers are reading. You can contribute articles, and it's a really easy way to get in the door, because then the work is not on the journalist to interview you or anything. You're writing an article and submitting it, and they just need to approve it and, publish it essentially. So it's really easy for the publication. And then you get control, like a majority of the control over the way you're telling your story. You just want to bring to it, and this is the challenge for some of my clients, which is why they work with me. You want to bring to it the eye of, a journalist or an editor, and really come up with a creative headline and a creative way to frame what you're talking about. So I worked with this client who is a small business lawyer in Arizona, and we were watching what was happening in the news, and he does copyright and intellectual property a lot. So I don't know how we came up with this together, but I ended up framing this story about how when you're copywriting the name of a business or trademarking it or whatever, it shouldn't have the type of product or service you offer in the name. I forget what the rule is called in law, but there's a rule for it. And so your trademark or copyright won't get approved for that. So to run a business that's selling marijuana, you don't want to have weed or marijuana in the name of the business. You have to get a little more creative in order to be able to trademark or copyright it. So, hopefully that sounds interesting to you guys. I think we framed it in a really good way. It was the little known consequence of selling marijuana was the headline we came up with. And that got published in Entrepreneur. People loved it. So
right. It's a great catchy headline, which what you're talking about is the same approach you have to take with any advertising, marketing, or journalism campaign. You've got to come up with a hook that appeals to your target audience. In this case, it's reporters, or it's Huffington Post or whatever it is. And then you've got to have a reason for them to take it and be able to use it and run with it. And when you give them, here's a turnkey article that solves your need for an interesting post about this topic, and you've written it well, and you've got a great hook for them, then that's easy. That's easy to say yes to. That's already prepackaged for them,
So that's exactly what I was kind of talking about earlier with, copyright law does not sound sexy whatsoever. That's one of those things where it's who wants to hear that? But that's definitely a great example of how you took that and turned it around into something that is relevant today, right? On my Pandora station today, I heard so many advertisements for the local news today about, is Sacramento going to be a pot city? And, and I'm I'm sure not, but let's hear how you spin this today, So it's something relevant that's getting a lot of attention. So that's great. That's a great example. So, all right. So you kind of went through, you said have your website, have your start your digital presence. You said you don't have to be everywhere, but at least be. So how I think about this is I try to just be in the major places and have something that if people come, it doesn't look like my business is dead, right? Like that's kind of my approach, not saying it's the best approach, but on places where I'm not super active, I guess is what I'm saying, right? Like where I'm not going to post every day. Do you guys have another recommendation for that? Or, something that we can be a little more specific than what I just said, because that doesn't do anybody any good. But
I think too, a step past just having a website, I think it's really important for people to have a media room or a press room, and not just a press kit. I know lots of people, with bloggers do media kits thinking like, oh, this is where I put my numbers so brands and people can advertise. But I think having a media or press room is a great place. It's sort of your digital, toolbox of PR elements. It's where, if you want to create press releases rather than using a press release to pitch the media, it's a great place to put those things on your website. Any clippings, any sort of, press logos, anywhere you have been, websites, podcasts, local news, radio, television, so that you have a presence. It's not something that you have to work on every day or even every week. Just every month, make sure that it's up to date. After you do something, appear somewhere, make sure that you're adding that to your press room. Because often that's where media will go. If you pitch them, they're going to check that out. And you want to have that central place, and it's something that you can share on your media platform or your social media platforms, right? If you're on Twitter, it's a great link to share with people, just to say, hey, look, this is the great stuff we're doing. Twitter, I think you guys talked about Twitter early on, but I think if you're thinking about pitching, it's a great place to do your research. So start creating some lists, have public lists, great, but private lists, because you have to remember when you add somebody to a list, if it's public, it notifies them that you've added them to a list. So if you create some private lists for yourself, you start sort of collecting media contacts, so that when you put them and add them as a column into your Hootsuite or TweetDeck, you can see what they're sharing and see the content. But it also allows you then to jump on and use the technique of piggybacking on the news. Some people call it newsjacking. I don't like that term. It's not.
I don't like that. That's negative.
It's negative. Yeah, so piggybacking on the news. Because sometimes people have trouble. They think, I really want to pitch the media, but I'm really not sure what story I should be pitching. You piggyback on something that's already in the news, whether it's topical, topical, it's happening that day. Maybe it's breaking news, or maybe it's, something political, health related, but also seasonal, right? Holidays, times of year, travel, so that you can see, because especially for daily news, if it's a story that's happened in the morning and then it happens at noon and they still want to do it at 6 and then they want to do it at 11, they have to find a new way to do it. They have to find a new way to advance the story, so that you then can pitch and piggyback and say, hey, I've got a great new angle. I've got something more to add to it, or I'm countering that. I don't agree with it. And you then give the journalist a reason to talk to you, because you're helping them push the story forward and add more value in a way for their audience that's different than how they've presented the story during the day. And that's a great way. So if you're using Twitter to create your lists, and then you're able to follow them, see what they're sharing, and jump on a story that's already happening. And that's a great way to start. If you're sort of new, you see the value in, getting press, but aren't sure of how to do that. Because sometimes it's really hard to pitch a story about your business. It's really hard to hear this, but most journalists don't really care about your business.
No, they don't.
Right? They care about the stories they're presenting to their audience, whether it's their listeners, their viewers, their readers. So piggybacking is a great way to jump in. It's a good point of entry without you having to really work too hard in generating, a story. You're not reinventing the wheel. You're just jumping on something that's already there.
So, Christy,
sorry.
I just had a follow-up question for that. How quick do you have to be with that? And what do you need to have in place so that, because it sounds like this is happening really fast. So what do you need to have in place? How are you going to be ready to go if they say we'd like to hear more? Can you tell us a little bit about how fast that moves and what that process is?
In daily news, it does happen pretty fast. So you already have to, I think, have some people have those lists in place. And it doesn't always mean emailing. Margot talked about how she's had success on Twitter. So it maybe just means, reaching out to them, because if it's things that are happening, journalists are going to have Twitter in their TweetDeck or Hootsuite up. They follow trends, they follow hashtags. I think I've read a few surveys of journalists, and anywhere from 50 to 70% use Twitter every single day to do their job. So Twitter is your point of entry. I think you can, tweet at them, say, hey, I've got, this to say. Can I DM you? Can I email you? Can I call you?
Right.
And that's a way to jump on it. But, obviously you don't have to be a news hound to follow. There are tools, right? So set yourself up with some Google alerts, with some, your niche industry, topics, keywords, create your Twitter lists. And there are some newsletter, things. I'm in Canada, but in the States, there's something called Skim. And it sends you sort of the news of the day in sort of point form with links to add, to follow up and find the original source material. But that just helps you kind of stay on top of maybe what's happening. And you do have to be plugged in a little, like, to be honest, you do have to be slightly aware of what's happening in the world. And it's, if you run a business, there is interest there, right? So you're going to pay attention to your industry news. So it shouldn't be that hard, but in a daily newsroom, it does work pretty quickly. But again, be aware, like, oftentimes the producer at 6:00 is different than who's producing the news at 11, and also different than the morning show. So, they have a different timeline of their workday. I worked evenings. I was an 11 o'clock producer, so I didn't show up to work until 3:00 in the afternoon. So if you were to pitch me, at 2:30, 3:30, that's the great point of entry for me. Whereas a 6:00 producer is probably more like that, 10 to 7 person. So you're going to want to reach out to them earlier in the day.
Right. Makes sense. Okay, Margot, I cut you off before. What were you going to add to that?
That's okay. I was going to comment on both Christy and Rosella's concept of piggybacking, and I agree. Piggybacking sounds a lot better than other terms.
Yeah.
And there's two kind of cautionary pieces that I would add to that. I think that both of you have implied that they're there. I'm just going to go ahead and call them out, and that is that it can't be a bait and switch. Like, there needs to be some little connection, or you're abusing it and it will be hijacking. So piggybacking and hijacking, there's a spectrum in there, and you lose people if you go too far. And it's subjective, it is, but wouldn't you guys agree?
Yeah. And you have to remember, like, journalists are a pretty savvy bunch. They've seen it all. And if you're trying to trick them, they'll catch on. And it may work the first time, but I can tell you that they have media friends. And if it's an ugly experience for them, they will share. And they will share heavy. So
and that is what is the great democratization that social media has brought to the world, is there's nowhere to hide. If you're going to be a schmuck, you're going to get found out, and that's not going to work well for you. You have just made a mess in your own doghouse, and you're going to get what you get for that. So I think it's a lot easier if you just go around thinking, how can I be a good citizen generally, and how can I bring the most value to the person whose attention I want? Exactly. That is, and don't waste their time, and don't approach them if you don't have something that's valuable yet. You don't throw in Kim Kardashian if that has nothing to do with your story pitch,
Yeah. And I think it's okay to reach out even when you don't have a story, right? So you want to nurture the relationship.
Right. That's right.
Send an email, say, this is who I am, this is what I do, and I'd really love to connect with you when I feel I have some stories that are of value. Is that okay with you?
Right.
Are there days that are good for you to connect? Mm-hmm. Is there a day during the week that maybe I can, call you and chat about what I do and what I want to share with you? I think that's a really great way too. You don't always have to have a story, just kind of make the contact and build the relationship.
I think that is a really good point, Christine. That was the first thing that you pointed out earlier in the hour, and I think it's a great point. It is true for absolutely everything in business. It's all about people connecting with people, building relationships, and it doesn't have to feel yucky. It's all about how can we help each other. I actually did a blab yesterday on networking and how to do it easily and naturally. And it sounds like you could have been on it because we talked about how it shouldn't feel like I'm trying to get something from you. It should feel like, let's talk to each other. Is there something I can help you with? Is there something you can help me with? If not, great. We know each other are there and what each other needs. And if I know of something, then I can forward it on to you. And that's how you bring value to the relationships. It's also respectful because you're not wasting their time with something that isn't valuable.
Rosella, I'm sure in being pitched as a journalist, you've seen it. I've seen it in my years where you get the pitches where it's obviously just about them and the promotion, and you tend to cut it off right away because it's not of value to you, and you know where it's going. Like you can see the path before you in those kind of pitches.
Yeah, give me 1 second, sorry.
So Rosella has left the building.
So I have several thoughts that have come up while you ladies have shared awesome tidbits. So the news jacking thing, whatever we're calling it.
Piggybacking. It's the good term.
Piggybacking. Yeah. Yes, the piggybacking. So when I do it with clients, like that article that was, the little known consequence of selling marijuana. We never in that article talked about I'm Steve Cook and I can help you come up with a name for your business. It was never that.
Right.
So, when you're doing when you are contributing articles, and you're doing that news, piggybacking thing, just keeping a consistent value is the key. I would never let someone I'm working with turn it into, this is who I am. This is what I do.
Yeah, a commercial. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't let them turn it into a commercial. So that's one thing. Another thought I had when Christy was talking about the newsroom, it's a great thing. And so many businesses and entrepreneurs don't even think about it, but you should do it. But then also there's a fine line there, because I worked with a client who, she was just seriously so vain. She would get these media placements, and then she wanted to put them in her blog. She would never share actual content in her blog. It was just, she wanted me to post links to her placements there. And I'm like, that's not where you do it. You do it in a page that says press or media, and so people can go there for that kind of stuff. Your blog should really be for you sharing content with your reader that gives them value. It doesn't just go, look at me.
Right. Yeah. And the one thing you can do, the only thing I would say about that is that if you do want to highlight your appearances on a blog post, you have to add something else. So maybe, the top 5 lessons you learned from, being featured, or, what did you learn about how the newsroom works, or, some cool behind the scenes stuff, especially if you're doing TV. Because a lot of people don't ever have that opportunity, right, to be in a working newsroom. So what can you share with them besides saying, hey, look at how fantastic I am, that they can learn from, right? Some interesting tidbits. Because there is a way, you want to leverage your appearance, that everybody gets that. But sharing obviously on social media, but writing a post that's saying, hey, look, I was great on this segment, isn't the best way to do it. But you can share and add those extra tidbits, I think, is a great way to leverage it.
It's a really good point.
I think that's a great approach.
So I have another question here, and I know we're approaching the hour mark. So before I ask this question, I'm going to let anyone know who is in the chat box. If you guys have any questions, now is the time to post them before I let these ladies go, and then how can you get all this great info? So post your questions now so I can get to them. But I have a question first. So now some of you guys all do slightly different things in this field, but I'm going to ask you a question that is kind of, I want you to be honest. How do we know as a business owner when it is time to get help? When is there I can do this myself versus I need maybe like an assistant to just like put some lists together and follow some things, versus I need a PR person who's really going to take this seriously, because this seems like a lot of freaking work, guys. Like there's a lot of components here. And I'm just wondering, like, as a business owner, how do you put this all together? So when would you recommend to someone to kind of move through that process and go more to some more advanced help? Rosella, let's start with you, and we'll go around for me, which is Rosella, Christy, and Margot.
Okay. So first of all, you have to take into consideration your budget. I mean, if you don't have the money to hire someone, you can't hire someone. But if you do have an assistant, you could have them doing some of that admin stuff of building the Twitter lists, and the one thing I really want to say, because I've seen clients, I no longer do PR for my clients. Now I'm really in the consulting area where I'm telling you the strategies to market your business. And if you want PR help, I could help send you to someone like Margot to do it for you. I think that's what you do, Margot. So you can correct me if I'm wrong, but so I've done it in the past. And this issue I would run into was these business owners would be all, rah, 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 I want PR. And then when it would come time to, as Christy said, go schedule that interview for the journalist with the client, then the client is on the run and not answering the PR person, in which case the PR person looks like a straight jackass to the journalist, which is not fun for either person.
No.
And it just does your business a disservice. So if you're really going to say you want PR, then make it a priority in your life. Be flexible. If an interview comes up with a daily news, newspaper or a show or radio show, make time for it. Just drop everything you're doing, have that be an option for you.
I would say, part of it is work, but like anything in your business, it takes work. But I think we all are on social media. If you're checking your Facebook status, you have time to add a couple of new people on Twitter to your media list. You do. So use your social media time effectively. Nobody's saying that you can't look at those crazy cat videos on Facebook, but if you're on social, if you're on social for 30 minutes, make 10 minutes or 15 minutes of that effective, adding some contacts and reaching out and sharing some stuff. Setting up the systems that you need in place, whether it's Hootsuite or TweetDeck or whatever apps that you have for social sharing, use those. Set aside, schedule time to build your media contacts, right? So it doesn't mean every day spend 4 hours. It means maybe once a week, sit down and use your hour effectively to, if an hour is what you can set aside a week, great. Then build your lists, reach out, send your emails, make your contacts. Hiring PR, again, like Rosella said, if you don't have it in your budget, it can be costly. There's no doubt about it. But if you have the money, great. If you don't, especially if you're a solo entrepreneur, small business, you don't have those budgets. You just don't. But use your time online effectively. Build the relationships. If you take the time to build relationships, media will start to come to you. And then it will be less of your time reaching out. Share, make contacts, use some strategies. I don't do so much PR. I've done it. I've had that where you've reached out, you've set interviews up, and then you can't get your client on the phone, and then you look like an idiot. And that makes it really hard to pitch stories again, because you've wasted, a reporter or producer's time. It's awkward. But I share a lot of stuff on my blog, on my website. I'm going to shamelessly pitch ChristyALaverty.com. And I give some techniques of news piggybacking is a big one. Sharing your why, a great story. Part of pitching sometimes isn't about pitching your business, but finding where your business and your life and news and hobbies and your passions intersect sort of in the middle, that sort of sweet spot. Because sometimes it isn't about getting your face in the media for what you do to make how you earn a living. but you do it by sharing some insights, or, maybe you're a runner and maybe it's, what running has taught you about running a business, that kind of stuff. It's the sort of side way of getting your face and your business in the media. But it's a priority, right? So schedule the time. It doesn't mean doing it every single day, but schedule the time in your calendar every week. Take some time to build those relationships.
Yeah, great tips. Margot?
Yeah, really good ones. Yeah. Okay, 2 minutes. I'll be respectful of the time. Thanks for having Christy and I on. We weren't even invited in, and
I know.
It's been really fun. I totally agree with Christy that it is about making the most of your time and being very mindful and present when you are spending your time on any of your PR efforts. Actually, it's a really good idea to be mindful and present on any of the work you're doing, and allotting time so that maybe it's 30-minute chunks twice a week. That might be a good way to do it. There's actually an app that you can download that will help you track how often you pick up your phone and look at Facebook, and you'd be amazed at how much time we can find that we waste on social. So it's a good and a bad thing. So being very careful about how we spend our time, that is a good way to make sure that you do have the time to give it some valuable effort. So then there's how much value is the PR effort bringing to you, and it's very, very hard to get an ROI on public relations. Very hard. It is establishing your brand, your presence, your thought leadership. It is growing a community, and it's those things, and those are really hard to measure. So if you're a small business and you're looking to grow your business, then I think it's really tough to say you should make public relations a top priority, because the ROI just really isn't there. I don't do PR anymore. I have done it in the past, to answer your question, Rosella. But I've done it enough that I can talk about it, some marketing and public relations. And you have to do what makes the most sense for your business. You have to get the biggest bang for your buck. And if you're spending time on public relations and it's going nowhere, and I find media relations, that is what we're talking about, connecting with media, getting their attention and pitching stories, is harder and harder and harder as time goes by. So then it takes more and more and more effort, and then the ROI just goes down. So I think the approach of create valuable content, give it the spin, give it the, here's my value add, here's what I think of it, and here's how you can apply it to your life. I think that's way better of an approach for your content. It's basically content that you're talking about.
Yeah. All right. Those are all great tips. Guys, thank you so much, because I know, like Margot and Christy, thank you. This was like last minute. You guys just popped on, so I really appreciate that. I know that Rosella has a webinar coming up on Saturday that's all about thought leadership, and it's more in depth of some of the things we talked about today. So I wanted to give her an opportunity to let us know about that, because if you guys were on this blab and you enjoyed it and you want to know more about doing this whole media thing, PR thing, then Rosella is definitely the person to give you that advice. So Rosella, tell us when your webinar is on Saturday, and I'm sure I butchered what it's about. So share with us like what exactly it is about.
Okay. So I had some final thoughts, and they are that this contributing articles to publications, which is really my sweet spot, because it combines my experience as a journalist and my talents as a writer, and my understanding of what it means to run a business and to try to drive clients to your business. For me, it's really the best part of PR right now, at least. I have made thousands from clients who found me through Huffington Post, and it's not necessarily trackable, and it's not it's not dependable necessarily, but the clients I've gotten who have found me through those avenues have been my favorite clients. They come to me because they already have a perception of me as an expert in the topic. So, they come into the working relationship with an attitude that I personally really, benefit from. And it just makes it so much more enjoyable for me. So, and then like, if you get into Huffington Post, honestly, you are a contributor and you can submit articles anytime. And what you can do is submit articles that are from your blog. You can repost things from your blog, and that at the end you say like, this was published originally on rosellalefevre.com, and then you have a link back to your site and people can find more information about you. So it's something I've worked with and done for clients where I talk with them, figure out what they know, turn their expertise into a really great topic, and then I ask them to give me the finer points. Like, especially for like the lawyer I worked with, he had to give me an outline because he knows all of the ins and outs of legal situations that I don't. Sorry, one second. And so, you know, that's how I work with clients who I do it for. And then I also do workshops where I, you know, work with the student on turning their expertise into their first article and getting them ready to write it. And then I'll support them through editing the first piece and submitting it. So that's how I serve some clients and students. And on Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern time, I will be doing a webinar that is honestly so packed full of everything you could want to know about how to do this. So it's my 8-step process for how you can get your articles published. I show you exactly how I got published on Huffington Post. I will give you examples of some articles my clients have done and how they've turned what they know into these really great readable articles. And I'm sure there are things I'm forgetting, but you can go sign up. There's a list of like all of the things you would learn in the webinar at bit.ly. It's bit.ly/R L WEB. There you go. It's in the chat. So, so thank you for that. Yeah, and I can't wait to share this with everybody. I would love to have some of you there.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. If you guys are on, definitely follow all of these lovely ladies, and so you can get more from them. Christy, I know your link was in there. Margot, if you have a link, I would love for you to put it in there so that people, especially watching the replay, can find you guys and connect with you if they have any other questions or want to know more. You know, even though these ladies were mentioning maybe the ROI on actually getting a PR person or an agency to actually help you with this, I think what Rosella is saying about if you know how to do this, and this is a great way to get people back to your site, to list build, to get your name out there, to start building that media page like Christy was talking about, you know, this is still a great strategy, even though, like you guys were saying, maybe it's not always trackable. Maybe it's not always producing that ROI to justify having a big agency, especially when you are a small business or a solopreneur, but it's still a great way to get clients. It's still a great way to get people back to your site, to get your name out there. So if you guys are at all interested in this, definitely follow these ladies. And I'm sure they're blabbing, you know, all around town, so you can follow them. And see where they're on next. So, all right. Well, hey, ladies, thank you for coming on. Rosella, I'm glad that your technical issues resolved themselves and you got to jump in. And
yeah, sorry about that.
No worries, because you know what? And then Margot and Christy got to jump in, and that was cool. We had a great conversation. So, blab always works out. You never know how, but it always works out. So. Thank you, ladies. If anybody else has any questions in the chat, I'm going to wrap up the show, but you can put them in there or connect with them via Twitter, and I'm sure they will be able to get back to you. So,
great. Thanks again for everything. It was great.
Thank you. Have a great day.
It was nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you too. Bye.
Bye.